صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كل الطعام كان حلا لبني إسرائيل إلا ما حرم إسرائيل على نفسه من قبل أن تنزل التوراة قل فأتوا بالتوراة فاتلوها إن كنتم صادقين. فمن افترى على الله الكذب من بعد ذلك فأولئك هم الظالمون. قل صدق الله فاتبعوا ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين. إن أول بيت وضع للناس للذي ببكة مباركا وهدى للعالمين. فيه آيات بينات مقام إبراهيم ومن دخله كان آمنا ولله على الناس حج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا ومن كفر فإن الله عليم بما يعملون. قل يا أهل الكتاب لم تكفرون بآيات الله والله شهيد على ما تعملون قل يا أهل الكتاب لم تصدون عن سبيل الله من آمن تبغونها عوجا لم تصدون عن سبيل الله من آمن تبغونها عوجا وأنتم شهداء وما الله بغافل عما تعملون صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our second night here at Al-Mahdi Institute, and we have the pleasure of having Shaykh Arif to recite the lectures today. Today's lecture is titled, Does the Mahdi Exist? So this is the second in the series, and the first one is also available online. These lectures are primarily designed for online viewership. However, we do open Al-Mahdi Institute for people to attend physically, and for those of you who have, thank you very much. Can I welcome Shaykh with a loud salawat?
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين، ولعنة الله الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام. Going back to yesterday's talk and leading into what we want to say today. So yesterday we stated there are certain things that the scriptures tell us of that are a mystery for us. We do not understand precisely what is happening. At such points, rather than forcing an interpretation upon them, it is better for us to admit our inability of understanding what the scriptures are saying in their fullness. Now we see this hadith of the creation of the intellect and ignorance. And then intellect and ignorance is mixed within the clay from which human beings are to be created. And God says that these two will separate from each other with the process of time and the growth of human beings as a community on the face of the earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises the intellect and says, I will reward through you, and through you I will complete my arguments. The hadith carries on saying that the intellect will only be completed within a prophet or a wasi of a prophet, or those of the believers who have been thoroughly tested by God. As far as ignorance is concerned, when we look at it very accurately, ignorance is the attitude of arrogance. Ignorance is not the name for lack of knowledge, and neither is intellect the name for acquisition of knowledge. Rather, intellect is that attitude of surrender to the properties of growth. In other words, intellect here in this hadith means surrender willfully and wholesomely to God, who then fashions and refashions the human individual in his own divine image and brings him to the completion of his existence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the Quran, and this then is incorporated within a later hadith, that Allah brings forth living from the dead and dead from the living. And the hadith further states that this is the whole process where intellect and ignorance, their struggle, produces such variation through each other until they finally separate from each other. Now when we see the creation of Adam, the angels protest. They say, well, how can he be your Khalifa? If Khalifa means the representation of God. Khalifa can also mean the one who comes after, and both of these make sense because Adam comes after many other creations that have already been placed on the face of this earth. Adam is one amongst many prototypes who represent the fathers of species, according to the language of hadith, and now from our archaeological findings and whatever else, we find this. But here, in this instance, the angels are talking of Adam as the representation of God on the face of earth. So the angels are protesting and they're saying, but he will cause corruption and spill blood. This is inconsistent with your khilafah, because your khilafah is one of the intellect, one of production, creation, one of bringing about consistency and harmony. Destruction and corruption. Corruption, in other words, means disharmony, disunity, tearing things apart. This is not in keeping with your khilafah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but I have taught him all the names. And nonetheless, he is better than you because you cannot represent me without having sufficient knowledge base. He is more equipped to represent me than you are, for you do not know where my pleasure lies or my devotion lies in terms of the function that the Khalifa is supposed to perform. What this therefore then signifies is that Adam, as he is endowed with knowledge, is going to then flow in his humanity. By the flow of Adam in humanity, I mean the flow of humanity. The children of Adam, who are all Adam in their own right, because all of them, according to the Quran, were there when the angels prostrated to Adam within the form of Adam. The only thing is they were not separated from Adam. So each one of the children of Adam is Adam. And each one of, oh, I see Adam is smiling at me here. Salawat. I was wondering why that expression on your face. So each one of the offspring of Adam is Adam. The one who does not have a father, that Adam, yes? And they all are endowed with this knowledge. And this knowledge cannot help but show itself and manifest itself with the progress of humanity. At every instance here now, there is a struggle within Adam in his individual capacity, within the collective body of Adam known as humanity. There is a struggle between the intellect and between ignorance. Now here, what we are told is that there is an eventual prevalence and victory for the intellect over ignorance. But humanity has to reach there at that point. So what we are seeing here is that there is a dynamism within humanity. There is knowledge, but knowledge does not equate with intellect. Knowledge attaches itself to the human. What the human does with that knowledge is another thing altogether. So the Adam in himself is a composition of two diverse trends. One of surrender and flow. The other one is a regressive one in which he becomes stifled and arrogant and egoistic. And that is why the hadith said to the intellect, retreat, it did so. It said to the intellect, advance, it did so. And when God said to ignorance, retreat, it did so. When he said to the ignorance, advance, it failed to do so. So therefore, there's a regressive trend within Adam and humanity. And there is a progressive trend. The regressive and progressive trend are nothing to do with knowledge. They are to do with the attitude accompanying knowledge. So when an individual is surrendering and flowing through knowledge, that is then known as the trend of the intellect, or what we associate with the Messiah and Mahdi, or the conceptual Mahdiism. On the other hand, if with knowledge there's a regressive trend from within, in which the individual becomes egocentric and arrogant and possesses all the qualities that that ignorance has, that we counted yesterday, of arrogance, of ungratefulness, of lack of care, of lack of mercy, of not flowing to the truth and enlightenment, of not having security, not having nobility, not having dignity, not having decency, then that is the regressive trend that initiates through the flow of humanity within knowledge. And that is what is known as the Dajjali element, the deceptive element, the false pretentious element. Now, if we understand it in this way, things become a bit more clearer, that we are all simultaneously struggling within ourselves as we grow intellectually. We are struggling between these two tendencies. The tendency that is liberating at an inner level and gives us greater growth and self-realization towards godliness. And the tendency that is regressive and that makes us firm in our ego, arrogant, and internally brings out the worst in us and rids us of the completion that is associated with the state of godliness. You will see that the most powerful person, if he is tyrannical within their soul, they are so insecure that they require to be enamored by obedience of people. Whereas you see in a soul that is complete from within, like Hussein ibn Ali, that there are 30,000 soldiers ahead of him, and he is fully confident of his own self. We are seeing this lack of security, confidence, lack of confidence, fear, and courage. So the Dajjali element is within us, and the Mahdi element is within us. Now the thing about the Dajjali and the Mahdi element is that they work hand in hand. There is no particular social, political, economic system that is Dajjali. On the other hand, there is no socio-political, economic system that is Masayane, or that is akin to Mahdi. It's just one. You remember the example we gave yesterday. The television was considered by the Muslims as the Dajjal. What they fail to understand is that it is not the Dajjal because it has one eye. It is an achievement of humanity. It's a technological achievement. But within that are the two elements of Mahdi and Dajjal. The television can desensitize us to human suffering. Media can awaken us to human suffering. It depends on how we use it. Everything is the same. Any economic system, any political system, any social system. You can do as much good with it as you can do harm with it. Because all of these systems are a product of the evolutionary trend of humanity. They were fair in their own time, possibly they become unfair with the progress state of humanity. Feudalism might have been good at one point, according to the state of the existence of humanity, just like slavery. At one point, it had place. Prisoners of war were dealt with as slaves. Today, it is abhorrent, inconsistent with human rights, because humanity has flowed. Our sense of nobility has increased. We are refined moral individuals. So if we can now just recap this point and then embark on today's talk, that the Dajjali element and the Mahdi element run together. They are intertwined within the fabric of humanity. Allah says, قَدْ أَفْلَهَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. The nafs or the awakening within the framework of the Dajjali and the Mahdi element, Allah says, this nafs or the human soul is successful, the one who purifies it. And indeed, at loss is the one who tarnishes it. It's the same thing. We are caught up, or maybe you can later on go and read Rumi and other great masters who talk about the conflict that happens within the soul between the Dajjali and the Mahdi element, as a falcon and a crow being tied together. They are wounding each other, and both of them are devastated and frustrated because they can't loosen the grip of the other. But at the end of the time, according to the prophecy, the Mahdi element will prevail. Now I need to make one point here as we go into today's talk. Mahdi as an individual is the culminating glory of the Mahdi trend. But he can never come until the Mahdi trend is matured and ripened to a state that can allow him to come, because otherwise he would be useless. Similarly, the Dajjal as that supreme individual endowed with utmost knowledge will only come when the Dajjali trend is ripened from within. This is the secret, that both of them are two sides of the same coin. They are both evolving together. As the knowledge base increases, so does the aptitude of destruction through the Dajjali, and the ability to create and be good through the Mahdi phase increase. So all of us are facing the same struggle within. Humanity at large is facing the same struggle from within. We gave quite a few examples of previously what happened in the history of humanity, and how Moses said no more good people are going to come, destroy them. Nuh said no more good people are going to come, destroy them. Hud, Saleh, Lut, Shu'aib, all of them, when they saw the separation from the Mahdi, between the Mahdi and the Dajjali element, they left and the others were destroyed. Now we mentioned one point that I just want to here repeat, and that is that the Dajjali element is as sophisticated as the Mahdi element in the way it articulates itself, in the way it constructs rational arguments, in the way in which it convinces. Think about it very, very carefully. Today, in the name of liberty, progression, our children's innocence is being snatched away from them by exposure to things that would have been considered indecent a few years ago. The innocence in the name of education, in the name of progression, is being stolen from them. Look at how we are becoming desensitized to the problems around the world by overexposure to it. If you see and hear of a brutal murder of one person, you will be shocked. But if the news keeps on feeding this to us day in, day out, and tells you that you are stuck to your couch and you can't do anything about it, we become desensitized. When earlier on, I'm talking about a couple of decades ago, when we criticized the situation in Pakistan, the response from the general over there was, well, look at it in percentage-wise. There's hardly anybody who's being killed if you look at the population of Pakistan. I mean, this is how we reason. This is how the Dajjalic mentality reasons. There's only 5,000 people killed. What's a big deal? We have how many hundreds of millions? This is the way the thinking is. So the Dajjali element is as sophisticated as the Mahdi element. The fundamental difference is what we stated, that the Mahdi element is one of promoting life, beautiful qualities, growth towards godliness, no toleration of injustice or oppression, of taking the rights of others, utmost respect for human nobility, human dignity, and human rights in the rightest way. Whereas the Dajjali element is the sophistication that you see without care for the life of other or pretentious care for the life of other, but then it's justified through elaborate arguments. Promoting unjust governments to the United Nations Council of Human Rights and making them heads is a joke. But Saudi Arabia at that point, when they were doing all wrong things, were promoted by our British government with the most beautiful arguments you could ever think of. Today we sell arms to Saudi Arabia. They are killing innocent people in Yemen. But there you go, it's justified. Today the Muslim world, in the name of Islam, justify proxy wars. Think about the Dajjali element. It's as sophisticated as the Mahdi element. It does not spare any aspect of human life. Nobody should feel safe just because they call themselves Muslims, as opposed to secularists, that they are free of the Dajjali element. It's intertwined within the fabric of existence. Abu Sufyan at one point stood in opposition of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At another point, the Sufyan's family became the biggest cancer within Islam. It was easier to deal with Abu Sufyan when he stood opposed to the Prophet Muhammad. It became far more difficult to deal with Abu Sufyan and his lineage when they became part and parcel of Islam. So what I'm trying to say here is that the Dajjali element, the pretentious, deceptive element, is a part and parcel of our reality. Let us get that one right first. It is not an alien thing that's going to happen or a monster. It is a living reality that is coexisting with our existence. Now, I hope then that is a sufficient prelude from yesterday to go into now. We are foretold then that the truth shall prevail. The prevalence of truth is in the form of humanity maturing, growing, coming to that state of godliness, and ridding itself of the element of pretense and ego and arrogance. That particular state will then culminate in the form of a glorious person coming and leading it, who in Islam is termed as the Mahdi. The Blessed Prophet said, even if from the life of this day, from the life of this world, nor more than a day remained, Allah shall prolong that day to the extent that a son of mine will come and fill it with peace, justice, just as it was filled with oppression and injustice before him. But he can only do that if humanity at large understands the worth of peaceful, harmonious coexistence. That under no circumstances do ends justify evil means, until and unless the human intellect ripens to that level. So now the question comes that can we prove the existence of Mahdi? When we ask this question, immediately a counter question is asked. Are you talking about the existence of Mahdi at present? Or are you talking about the existence of Mahdi in a future world? Because there's a huge distinction between the two. I ask a question in reverse. Does it make a difference whether a person believes in Mahdi's existence at present or Mahdi's existence in the future to the status of that person believing in Mahdi? The answer is no. Both are equally believers of the Mahdi. What I'm trying to point out here is that the notion of Mahdiism within Islam itself is so broad that it allows for pluralistic interpretation. So here we can say that the Sunni brothers who do not believe in the physical birth of the Mahdi at some point in distant history that has passed, but who instead say he will come. And the Shias who say no, or many of the Shias who say that no, he has taken birth, equally belong to the Mahdi in terms of their belief in Mahdi. So Mahdi, the physical Mahdi, is not a point of distinction between the Sunnis and the Shias. In fact, if we were to take the notion of the broader Mahdi, the Messiah, then in that case, the Abrahamic faiths are immediately included within the belief of the Savior, whether he is known as the Messiah Isa or Masih Isa with Mahdi. Both of them are believing in the same thing. From here, they should give us a broadness of understanding that just as they all believe in the same God, the same revelation that has been revealed over time in different forms, they believe in humanity arriving at its glorious completion, being headed by one produced from within the ambit of humanity. Imagine how close everybody is brought then to the belief in God and in the belief of the Messiah and salvation and Mahdi. If Mahdi conceptually is what we are after, and a futuristic Mahdi, then we can join hands then with the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Zoroastrians and the rest of them. And even the secularist world can then join in, because the good Mahdi element prevalent within every human soul is prevalent within every secularist as well. Just as the Dajjali element prevails within every Muslim. Can you imagine if we were to broaden this theory, how phenomenally it can work to bring together this world of ours, that we can all evolve. There is an eventual state, according to the materialistic theory, that humanity will arrive at of beautiful and perfection. According to the secularist, their core aspiration is that. According to the people of faith, whether Abrahamic or outside the folds of Abrahamic faith, they all believe in this. Imagine then, Mahdiism becomes a force of bringing humanity together as opposed to creating these feeble notions that Mahdi will come and kill the rest of humanity. And I will only be the one who attains salvation and success. Because when the Mahdi comes, of course, these are things that I'm going to be discussing in the next few days. The mullahs will be the first one who reject him. It will be their Dajjali element within them that will cause them to reject Mahdi. Just as our Jewish cousins were telling the pagans of Medina that the Prophet will come. When he came, they were the first ones to deny him. The people of the scriptures, the Dajjali element did not allow them to accept the Prophet, whereas the pagans' Mahdi element allowed them to accept the Prophet. How odd is the story? How strange is this story? So now, as far as the conceptual Mahdism is concerned and the beautiful, glorious end of humanity is concerned, belief in the birth of Mahdi 1,200 years ago or his future birth does not make much difference. Let us clarify that from the very outset. Both are equally belonging within the folds of Islam to the belief of Mahdi. And as far as the broader humanity is concerned, all of them are united in this. Now, what difference does it make? It makes a huge difference. Think about all the theology that is created around the notion of the existence of Mahdi at present. Think about all the authority structures that have divine seal of approval in the name of Mahdi as they are leading in his absence in his name, during his absence in his name. All of them become undermined if he does not exist. So there's a huge thing at stake here. On the other hand, if he does exist, then all of this spirituality, theology, governance of the world acquire a lot of meaning. So there is a lot at stake here. And that's why this particular topic is one of the most sensitive topics ever. Now, what about his existence at present in his birth? I'm going to go through a very difficult discussion now. Okay? And we need to persevere with this. The antagonists state that if he had taken birth in the way that the school of the Imami claims, then why was it the case that in the period of Hira, the period of confusion, 100 years from the commencement of the major occultation onwards, that there were quite a number of Shia sects, but there was this sect that talks about the 12 Imams did not come and produce any evidence that says that 12 Imams are there foretold by the Prophet and these are their names. It's an objection that is valid. Why is it that the Shia sects say that we went out looking for him and we've searched for him and we can't find it? Hassan al-Askari Salamullah alayhi does not have an offspring. Why is it that the counter arguments were not produced at that point? Why is it that the first emissary went and congratulated the brother of Imam Hassan Askari, Ja'far, who was later known as Ja'far al-Kadhab, Ja'far the false claimant and liar? Why was he gone? Why was he congratulated initially for being the Imam after his brother? Why is it that Bibi Halima, the aunt of the Imam, at one instance says he wasn't there, and at another instance says he was? Why are all these questions there? They are asking us. And two, if the names of the 12 Imams were already mentioned by the Prophet, then why do we have so many feuds within the Shia early history? Why is it that there's a dispute as to who is the Imam after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein? Is it Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, his brother? Or is it Imam Ali ibn Hussein Salamullah alayhi, his son? Why should that dispute have occurred in the first instance? Why was there a problem that the Imam's lineage after Hussein ibn Ali Salamullah alayhi comes from Al-Hassan as opposed to Al-Hussein, or Al-Hussein as opposed to Al-Hassan? If the matter was so clearly detailed in the hadith of the Prophet, why did we get these disputes? Why is it that after Imam Zainul Abidin Salamullah alayhi, there was no consensus that Imam Baqir is the Imam? Why is it that after Imam Ja'far Sadiq Salamullah alayhi, there is no consensus that Imam Musa was the Imam? Ismail was deemed to be the Imam, according to many sources. According to some sources, we have that Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayhi said, I thought Ismail was going to be the Imam, but Allah took him. So they are saying, look, this notion that all the names of the Imams were known and already detailed, if that was accurate, then why do we have all these feuds and these confusions and all this rowing and all this conflict and fighting? And then why is it that nobody went and advanced this as an authoritative proof that these are the 12 names, and the 12th one can't be Ja'far, has to be Muhammad ibn al-Hassan al-Mahdi Salamullah alayhi? These are questions that need to be taken very seriously from the perspective of history. Now, when we look at history, it does not give us a clear picture. The answer here needs to be explored differently. Obviously, the answer here needs to be explored differently, and tomorrow we will go into that as we flow further into these lectures. The answer needs to be given very, very differently. That is there sufficient evidence elsewhere? Not of this nature, but of different nature, that can then give us assurance that Mahdi does exist. Not in order to rectify our theologies and practices and authority structures, but in order to just come to an accurate understanding whether he exists or not. Not in order with any other motive of justifying anything else, just to see whether this makes sense in itself. For today now, I leave us with this particular understanding, that the ahadith of Mahdi are quite striking. Think of these futuristic ahadith, that the people in East will see the people in the West. People from one end of the world will hear other people on the other end of the world. People will see each other in the palms of their hands. People will wish to be somewhere and they will be transported. Human beings will have children without the assistance of a woman, or man will have children without the assistance of a physical human womb. These are all talking of future technologies. At one point, our feeble minds thought these were all miracles. Today, we are beginning to understand that these are talking about our exploitation of nature, a technologically ripened state. People will hear the Mahdi in their own languages. Today, we know that's very possible. And people will see him, and everybody will see him wherever they are. The holographic sort of technology that is coming up now. People will live to see 7 generations. The poles between east and west will change. The rotation of the earth will be such that the sun shall rise from the west and set in the east. Now tell me, who 1,400 years ago or 200 years ago or even 500 years ago would have had the vivid imagination of being able to think of things like these? Think about it. We can only think, imagine, and dream in terms of what our context can tell us, right? I cannot think of a parallel universe and its properties. So I cannot imagine it at all. I can't tell you anything about it. Anybody 200 years ago or even 100 years ago could not have said these things. It is well beyond human imagination. So the ahadith that talk about this, even though the antagonist will say that these are solitary narrations and you can't rely upon them in terms of a belief. And as I said yesterday, we pointed at what is the worth of a belief, and we want to follow that through as well tomorrow. I will say that these narrations are solitary narrations, but look at how valid and meaningful they are. Who can give these predictions and future prophecies? So they say, okay, then what are you trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that together with these narrations, 3 types of words are used. The words, khuruj, the coming out of Mahdi, will be accompanied with these signs. The word zuhur, the appearance of the Mahdi, will be accompanied by the appearance of these signs. The word amarul qaim, the affair of the qaim, will commence. And another word, qiyam, his missionary role will acquire from that point. None of these ahadith talk about the birth of the Mahdi in a future world. If the Mahdi is so important, then surely the Sunni hadith or Shia hadith, given the huge number of these ahadith, would have talked about his parents. As I said, I want to follow this through properly tomorrow. But for today, the hadith that the Prophet is narrated to have said, according to our Sunni brothers, that Mahdi will be from the sons of Fatima. I want to ask a simple question. When you say son of Fatima salamullah alayha, after 2,000 years, 1,400 years, the gene is getting so diluted. The gene gets so diluted, the Sayyid gene. Please forgive me, all those who are Sayyids here. It gets so diluted that is it possible to say son of Fatima for somebody who is going to take birth after 2,000 years? Or does the context of his speech in itself implies that in a future that is so not so distant? Can you see that? And then the Prophet has said that there will be 12 chiefs, all of them from Quraysh, and the affair of Islam will be firm until they are there. Now if we look at the chiefs that the Muslims have produced, let's say the 4 Khalifa, okay? And then you have the Bani Umayyah. They can never be righteous chiefs, can they? Or you add Bani Abbas in there, historical sort of occurrences as khulafa. You will say these people were corrupt. They cannot be somebody that the Prophet is pointing at. So who were these 12 anyway? They have to be somebody quite noble. So there is ample evidence, but very differently on the other side, that can prove or give a lot of support to the idea of the existence of Mahdi. As I said, my intention is not to prove any theology or theological practices or authority structure through this. I just want to explore this particular theme very objectively, or as objectively as we can. Of course, there's always a personal bias there attached to whatever we discuss, but inshallah the audience is intelligent enough to differentiate between where my personal biases are towards the Mahdi and between what is rationally based. Imam Hussein Salamullah alayhi is being asked to give his allegiance to Yazid ibn Muawiyah. In one of his statements he says, the likes of me do not pay allegiance to the likes of him. He is not talking about his noble lineage. He is talking about his godly element. That a person who is conscious of God and human values cannot pay allegiance to somebody like Yazid. Now, allegiance here did not mean, as we will discuss this tomorrow, did not mean that you take him as your imam or khalifa or divine guide. Allegiance here means to not stand in opposition and not to come out in rebellion. That is what allegiance means, bay'ah. Because Imam Hussein knew that he will oppose Yazid. And if he were to give allegiance, it means to not to oppose him and implicitly condone him. She said, the likes of me cannot pledge allegiance to the likes of him. The likes of me are required by my very nature and my commitment to God to mount an opposition. When he sees the situation in front of him, he has no choice but to leave Medina. We have this narration that I've read somewhere, that as Hussein prepared to leave, an onlooker says, he sat on his seat. The Hashimis were around him. In that, they say, we saw a princely figure accompanying a woman. The narrator says, I asked, who is this? And I was told, he is Akbar, the son of Hussein. I asked, and who does he accompany? It is his mother. He came, he knelt to the ground, and she ascended within the carriage. Then I saw a majestic figure appear, whose face bore the majesty of kings and filled my heart with awe, accompanying two women. There was a cry, cast your glances to the earth, O sons of Hashim. I asked, who is this man? I was told, this is Abbas, the son of Ali. Who are the women that are with him? They are his sisters, Zainab and Kulthum. He knelt to the ground and they ascended within the carriage. I will say, O Zainab, remember this scene, for you will be recalling it time and again. The first time when Zainab's back is struck with the whip, and she is told to ascend a naked camel, she looks at the torn body of Abbas as it lay, torn off its head at the banks of the Euphrates. He said, oh brother Abbas, were you not the one who assisted me within the carriage as we left Medina? Oh Abbas, do you see not how they treat your sister? Oh Abbas, shall you not come to my aid as I call upon you? ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة.
So we'll now have a Q&A with Shaykh. The questions are through the website, so it's www.shaykharif.com, and then it's either live, and you can also get yesterday's lecture if you put /lectures as well. So we've had a number of questions, and a few particularly from yesterday's lecture as well, which have spilled over into today's as well. So what I've done is I've compiled them. Hopefully I can paraphrase and we can answer this, because I think it's a really important question. Obviously this topic, as you mentioned, is quite emotive and pertinent to everyone here. You know, their attachment to the Imam, be it present or future. However, the listeners, some are particularly, agreeing with what we've said about the internal Mahdiism. But is the Mahdi limited to our internal faculties, and is it that, or is there a physical Imam accompanying that as well? So we just want clarification.
Yes. So at every instance we have had a physical Mahdi. All the prophets are manifestations of the physical Mahdi along human history. And then there is a final physical Mahdi who is from the children of Bibi Fatima, who according to the Shias is the son of Imam Hassan Askari, who according to the Sunnis will come in a future time. He will be the physical being of Mahdi, who will receive Isa. They will be together in the Masjid of Bani Umayyah according to the hadith both sets have agreed upon, the Sunni and the Shia. They will pray together. Isa will pray behind the Mahdi, and I'll narrate this afterwards. That is a physical Mahdi who is a crowning glory of humanity and the prophetic trend. So in addition with the internal Mahdi that is forever unfolding, there is a physical Mahdi. And at the same time, its antithesis, the pretender, the deceiver, the Dajjal, has also had manifestations all the way on human history, and you have the physical Dajjal, who will come as a culminating glory of that trend.
And to an extent, one of the questioners, the listeners, goes to the point of, can we just limit it to an internal Mahdiism? Does there need to be a physical?
No, not at all. We always come to a point where we are ready to be pushed up a notch, and then a brilliant mind comes and pushes us up to that notch. It's somehow the dynamics of humanity is such that we come to a level and we just stay there. We don't know what to do next. And then a brilliant revelation comes or disclosure comes in the mind of one person who then pushes humanity to the next pedestal. That's been the human trend.
So I think that's quite clear now, so that's really good. The other question, and there was only one other question particularly about this lecture, was you mentioned about the signs, and I'm sure you're going to go into this.
Yeah.
But someone was asking how they determine which signs are true and not true, and what they can take, as a sort of fact and not fact.
Yeah, so a lot of the signs that talk about the rise and fall of civilizations can be interpreted in a variety of ways. Yes? But when you talk about technological science or cosmological science, this is not up for interpretation. It's happened. There, it was foretold. At least it's been recorded for the last 400-500 years. We know it's been extant for the last 400-500 years. Nobody could have conjured them up and imagined them, right? So they must have come from the time that they attributed to, from the time of Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayh. Now, when we begin to see each other in the palm of our hands, we know that's a sign. It was foretold, right? Or when the earth changes, its polar axes are changed, and it begins to, and then the sun begins to appear from the east and set on the west. Not that the earth moves its circular motion, it just changes the poles. The motion is the same, but everything turns upside down. Then we can say, well, there's no other way of interpreting it, right? That's the only interpretation.
I think the listener also would really like some references as to where these narrations have come from, for their own personal sort of...
Sure, so they can then contact
put it through the website.
My assistant, and they can give all the references. That's a very good way of me getting out of it, isn't it?
So what's the difference if we don't assume that there's a physical Mahdi? You know, are we limited in our growth?
So now I want to discuss that tomorrow. It's a topic that needs to be discussed. But if we don't believe in the physical existence of a Mahdi, it has a knock-on effect on so many of our rituals, ceremonies, spirituality, outlook, governance, authority structures, their absolute rights, so on and so forth. Everything then is challenged.
And I think just the final one is the belief in Mahdiism or a Mahdi necessary for our faith in general as a Shia, is it part of our aqaid, we could call it?
So the thing is that we asked this question yesterday, what is a belief for? Is it belief for the sake of it? Is it that empty? Or does it have productive features? So the belief in Mahdi, whether he is present now or he's going to come in a future world, is supposed to promote a lot of growth with a lot of enthusiasm and confidence that none of these striving will go to waste. It is meant to culminate in that glorious state. So whatever good we can do is in place, it's not going to go to waste. So that's the good product, pragmatic at the pragmatic level. The belief in Mahdi is growth promoting. But it's become very negative, and we want to discuss that in the next few days.
I think that's the last question for today. I'd like to thank everybody for coming as well. And inshallah, we'll all see you tomorrow at the same time. And I think we will have salah now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.